Orange Board of Education meeting on Monday, July 20th, 2020 to order at, what do we got, Susan? 7:13. Matt, would you be kind enough to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Mrs. Brower, would you be kind enough to read us the mission statement?
The Orange Elementary School District recognizes that the education of each child is the shared responsibility of every member of our community. Our goal is to inspire and empower each student to achieve academic excellence, embrace social and individual responsibility, and lead with integrity. We believe all individuals should be valued and treated with respect. Together, we will make a difference.
Much. I do not believe we have any public participation. Am I correct? Very well. Correspondence. I would like to share a note with you that we received at the board. The family of Margaret Mary Kelly acknowledges with grateful appreciation the kind expression of your sympathy. Dear members of the Orange Board of Education, thank you so much for the lovely fruit basket you generously has made this difficult time much easier. We truly appreciate it. Sincerely, Aaron and Charles Flynn. Consent agenda. I'm looking for a motion to accept the item under the consent agenda. The item is the minutes from the June 15th, 2020 Board of Education meeting. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes? Betty, second. Susan, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Very well. You good, Mary? Presentation this evening. We will have a presentation regarding the reopening of the schools. Dr. Scarpetti.
Good evening, Mr. Kraut and our fellow board members. It's nice to see everyone in person. I've seen some of you throughout this time since school ended, but it's also nice to have everyone back here. As we begin our presentation, I want to take a moment of our first slide and to really present that thank you sign. As you see in the picture, it's really for all of you, and actually all of you at home watching at this time. This includes our parents, our students who went through a challenging time, our faculty and staff, and our entire community. I want to express my gratitude to all of you who are here or watching from home. I have great appreciation for the challenges you have dealt with the last 3 months and months that we may be facing together. As you've seen in many of the written articles, especially the ones that we've shared from the state, we are not only in a health pandemic, but an education emergency. This situation has created an education emergency that we must address. Recently, an extensive 50-page document provided by the state to guide district in writing their own unique plan to address the opening of schools. This could be found on our website as well as the state's. It was also emailed to families and staff. This presentation is an overview of the state plan as well as components of the Orange plan. There are more details that we'll include in the plan to address the needs of Orange as we continue to work on our plan. The state has asked the district to plan for a variety of instructional models. We need to be ready to ramp up or down what we are doing in response to an increase or decrease in COVID cases. To do this, we have set priorities. There are many priorities to consider when planning to return students to school. Among them are safeguarding the health and safety, physical safety, and emotional health and well-being of students and staff. This has always been a concern of ours, but now we are looking at this from a different lens than we have ever done before. We also need to consider the implications on the facilities, operations, teaching, and learning. The plan must emphasize equity, access, and support to the students and communities. An important part of developing this plan is fostering strong, two-way communications with partners such as families, educators, staff, and board members. Our plan must be guided by the health and safety of our students and staff. The members that are recorded here are representatives of the Board of Education, town health departments, teachers, nurses, school administrators, and district leaders. I wanted to take a moment, because when I first shared this, there were some questions we received from feedback from parents. I wanted to let all of you know that even though members are on here, this is quite extensive than what you see here. What we want to do is create a system of efficiency. So at first, when someone may have seen one teacher on our representative list, I would receive a call and saying, how could you have one teacher? And what I share with those people that have reached out to us is that is a teacher for you to contact. However, we've created multiple levels of streams of communication. Many times you may have seen in my communication is to reach out to your principal, reach out to me, reach out to Director Russo. So I just want to make sure that all of you understand watching at home, this is an extensive just people of representing, but the email that you received as a representative, it's to create a streamline and efficiency. In my opinion, the system is working because people have reached out to the principals and myself during this time. And we want to create a funnel to make sure that we have accessibility. And this actually goes for all of you. You may not see your name on here, but we have been in the fortunate situation that we have created an element in foundation, even in our subcommittees, that relate to every group that's been discussed in the plan that you're going to see in front of you and what you'll see in the future. Part of this communication is our community collaboration. So here you see a list of some of the things that we did with surveys, reaching out to families, our meetings now, our subcommittee meetings, our reopening meetings. Just recently, I reached out to Mr. Shanley. He happens to be on the Board of Finance. He, along with Mr. Gray, Mr. Kraut, we met Father Norman to reach out to say, is there a chance or opportunity if we may have to use Holy Infant School? If not, or there's furniture that we could use depending on the situations we're faced due to our buildings. We also reached out to Mr. Zioli. Mr. Zioli guided us to hopefully, if need be, maybe using some rooms at High Plains. So we're always trying to be creative, but this community collaboration is a key component of this. Included in this collaboration and what we're required to do as a district is to have a school liaison. A school liaison has been identified to monitor compliance with health and safety matters. Ongoing communication, as I just shared, has been established in an effort to keep all stakeholders informed with the most up-to-date information. The state document also encourages data collection to inform our decision-making. For example, the preliminary survey that was sent out to families to assist the district in planning for potential needs. As you may see on the data collection piece, and this is straight from the document we received from the state, it was to collect information for families to properly plan. Some of the feedback that we received after the survey was, Dr. Scarpetti, how do you expect us to plan when we really don't know the whole details? Part of the reopening committee, the phrase that we use is the chicken before the egg. It's like, what comes first? Does a plan come first or the information that we received? It's kind of both. As you will see here, these are the responses we received from the district survey. We received about 792 responses, and even though that we had an amount of 194 that responded weren't sure because of not knowing the plan, this helped us out because as Mr. Gray is about to present, key factors of transportation, classroom situations of how distant our destiny to be part have a crucial impact with what we're going to be receiving of how many students will actually be in our buildings. That being said, that was a preliminary survey, and that an additional survey will be sent in order to get a more distinct answer from our parents of what they plan to do when the plan is revealed. In front of you is a document that I shared. It's basically what I shared with the entire community, but a short form of all the components of the plan and the categories you'll see here. Before Mr. Gray explains how our reopening plan affects operations, he will review the mitigating strategies that making reopening a possibility. These mitigation strategies are at the heart of every aspect of a reopening plan, and as a result, affect several components, categories, and details, consequences, and new school expected behaviors. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Gray. Many of you know Mr. Gray, who has served the role of principal for the past 13 years at Racebrook School. Now he's our Director of Business and Operations, and he'll go over those mitigation strategies to begin with. Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Dr. Scarpetti. Thank you, members of the Board of Education, for the opportunity to share some of the elements of our plan with you this evening. As Dr. Scarpetti mentioned, I'll be going over some of the key mitigation strategies that we will be implementing for reopening of schools. And the challenge here is, if you've been to a store lately, you have to wear a face covering. When you go into BJ's, you're wiping down the carriage, they're giving you hand sanitizers. So these are mitigation strategies we're all experiencing now in our real lives. The challenge is putting this into the context of our school buildings. So that's what we've been dealing with for the past month or so in all of our planning, and hopefully tonight you'll get an idea of what we're doing as far as entering the buildings again with these safety precautions. So the physical and health and safety of our students is definitely the priority as we begin our reopening planning. The primary goal is that we institute mitigating strategies outlined in the Adapt, Advance, Achieve document from the state, that 50-page document that Dr. Scarpetti referenced. But it's also taking into consideration recommendations from the Connecticut Department of Education, Connecticut Department of Health, and the CDC. So the first one I want to cover are the face coverings. All people in buildings in our district will be required to wear a cloth face covering or mask, which covers the nose and mouth at all times, with certain exceptions, which may include but may not be limited to pre-existing medical needs. Classroom teachers will schedule regular mask breaks throughout the day and provide opportunities for students to take individual breaks as needed. Under these controlled conditions, children will be provided safe mask breaks while in school, including during lunch. And if I might, I'd like to make mention that there is a first read of a policy this evening around the idea of face masks and face coverings. Next are the cleaning and hygiene protocols. And you'll hear me say this a few times tonight, but the district will be adhering to the Department of Public Health guidance for cleaning and disinfecting of school buildings during COVID-19. Building plans for disinfecting high-touch surface areas are going to be a priority. Those high-touch surface areas include, but again, are not limited to, door handles, handrails, sinks, toilets, fixtures, light switches, cover plates, and that list goes on. All efforts will be made, however, in the school building to minimize the amount of contact with these high-touch surfaces. So we will be speaking to children about making sure that they are not touching their neighbor's desk. They're not touching their neighbor's materials. They're staying in their own spot. If they are migrating through the hallways, they shouldn't be using the handrails unless it's an issue going up and downstairs, which we have very few of them. But we're really going to talk to the children about minimizing their contact with objects around the building. And for those of you who have children, that's something we do all of the time with our children. Frequent hand washing and use of hands, all building restrooms will be sanitized multiple times throughout the day. We will have cleaning logs to track that in each of the buildings as well. Frequent hand washing and use of hand sanitizers in the buildings. So students will engage in frequent hand washing or sanitizing upon arrival, before and after eating meals, after bathroom use, after coughing or sneezing, and using soap and or water and sanitizer, which will be available in classrooms and bathrooms, as well as sanitizing stations that are being installed in the buildings, again in high traffic areas, such as when you enter the building, in our lobbies, at the security monitor stations, in our main offices as well. The district, again, is continuing the training and implementation of cleaning and disinfecting procedures for staff as recommended by the CDC and the Department of Public Health. Third-party training of custodial staff will continue for our enhanced cleaning and disinfecting procedures within our schools. Hygiene and cleaning is actually going to be a community event. So it's really going to be that partnership between home and school, where in school we are going to be talking to the children in the context of school, how we need to use our face masks, how we need to wash our hands frequently, how we need to social distance. But again, that's also going to have to happen at home, where parents are preparing their children for these messages and maybe even practicing over the summer. Principals will be putting out videos to families of wearing the masks, how to take masks off, how to put them back on, how to store them. We are ordering brown paper bags, which is the recommended way to store a mask when you're not using it. So students will have their own individual bags, and when they are taking a mask break or they're eating lunch, their mask will come off and it will go in that bag for safe storage, so that it does not get contaminated while they're in school. But again, it's something that we need to do as a community, and it's important to communicate these messages to children early and often so that it becomes something second nature to them, that, oh yes, I know why I'm wearing a mask. I know when I need to wear a mask. I know how I need to wear a mask. The same for hand washing. I know when to do this, why I'm doing it, and how I'm supposed to do that. And you'll hear more about that when I discuss signage and communication. So something else that we are working on is cohorting. So we'll be establishing stable groupings within the buildings. Again, functioning independently as much as possible within the school building to limit the number of interactions and mitigate the spread of COVID-19. This will also help in the event that we need to do any contact tracing. Social distancing is another mitigating strategy. So we are maximizing social distancing as recommended between 3 to 6 feet where feasible in our classrooms, achieving 6 feet when feasible, trying to stay to that upper level of 5 to 6 feet between workstations in the classrooms. And we've been pretty successful at doing that so far. I've reviewed, like Dr. Scarpetti said, we have reviewed community spaces at High Plains and Holy Infant, and it's served a dual role, like Dr. Scarpetti said, which is not only looking at the spaces in the event that we do need them, but looking at furniture that maybe we might be able to borrow and use in our classrooms to help with that mitigating strategy of social distancing. And in fact, I did reach out to Father Norman. We've been going back and forth, he and I will be picking up some furniture that we're going to try to use in our classrooms that they had that hopefully will work in our buildings. The review of the building spaces was done with myself and the building principals, each individually in their buildings, along with a space planner that we consulted with. And we looked at every classroom, measured them out. We mocked up one classroom at each grade level because most of the classrooms are similar sizing, but we were looking at the class sizes to do this. We also looked at our gyms, cafeterias, our libraries, art rooms as other spaces that we might be able to utilize if our classrooms could not hold the amount of students we needed to socially distance. So that's something else that we were doing. Transportation and HVAC are on this slide. They are certainly mitigating strategies, but I'm going to get into those in further depth on another slide. So on our next slide, oh, it isn't. Oh, all right. You know, I'm just going to do this. Thank you. So, reopening the facilities, before we can even come back, there are certain things that we need to do to reopen our buildings. One of the very first things is guidance for cleaning and disinfecting of schools during COVID-19. So I've already mentioned that. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into that. So custodians have been deep cleaning the buildings really since the end of March, going through every single classroom. They've emptied them out. They've cleaned the rooms from top to bottom, meaning they literally started by opening up our lights, cleaning out all the light fixtures, and then working their way down the walls to the floors, cleaning all the furniture before it came back into the room. So they've been doing a very thorough deep cleaning of the classrooms, the restrooms, the hallways, and the office areas. So we will certainly be ready for the opening of school as far as room cleanliness is concerned. We are going to be using products and continue using products that are approved by the Connecticut Department of Public Health and that are labeled to be more effective against emerging viral pathogens, following label directions for appropriate dilution, as well as contact times and kill times. So right now, we are using a product that has a 5-minute contact time, which means when you are spraying to disinfect, you don't simply spray and then wipe off. You have to leave it for 5 minutes so that it does in fact kill any pathogens that might be on the surface you're cleaning. There are a lot out there that are about 10 minutes or so, but Dr. Scarpetti, through his research back in April, was able to find one with 5 that we get from our third-party supplier, so that is what we're using. Again, we will have cleaning logs throughout the buildings to keep track of our cleaning as well as our sanitizing of the building, which will also help us with the ordering we need to do for cleaning products, because as you can imagine, we will be using more than we would normally. Another item is the return to service guidance for water systems. Something that people may not be thinking about is the buildings have been empty for 5.5 months now, and the water systems have not been used the way they usually are. So water has been sitting stagnant in pipes, toilets, and we need to flush those systems. So we actually are beginning this week. Custodians are systematically flushing the water systems in the buildings, and the way to do that, and again, this is guidance from the Department of Public Health, you start where the water comes in our pump rooms at our meters, and you work your way out through the building. Now there's an initial flush, which will get most of the contaminants out of the pipes and the distal pieces, which are your faucets, your water fountains, and your toilets. So we will be flushing that initially to get the contaminants out, but you want to continually do that, because what that does is that draws in the sanitizers from the municipal drinking or municipal water supply. And that's what we want to get to, so that we are sure our water is potable, it's clean, it's fresh upon the return to school. And we're going to continue starting that this week and then continuing weekly until school reopens. Another important piece to this is signage and messaging, and I referenced that a little bit earlier. So we will be posting signs in highly visible locations, again, your school entrances, staff areas, restrooms, anywhere there's a sink and someone needs to be washing their hands, there will be signs explicitly delivering those steps of how to correctly wash your hands. And these signs are going to promote and provide information for the mitigating strategies of washing the hands, wearing a face mask. They are going to be readily accessible for all populations, so students with special needs, students who may have English as a second language. We're going to provide as many picture type signage as we can so that everyone understands what the message is on those signs. The plans for protocols and procedures related to the operations of the buildings will be communicated to all stakeholders. I'll get into that a little bit more as you go from building to building, depending on the physical environment of the building or the physical environment outside of the building. Those plans may change a little bit. Another very large scale strategy here are the ventilation systems. So it's broken down into several layers. The first layer is right in our classrooms, and we have what are called univent systems. So if you've ever been in one of our classrooms, over near the windows, it looks somewhat like a radiator. And that is where our classrooms are supplied with their heat source, fresh air, and in the case of Peck Place School, they have cooling that comes from that unit. So all of those univent systems have been cleaned. The panels have been pulled off, they've been completely vacuumed inside, and all of the filters have been changed. So those are completely ready for the beginning of school. We're going to be in accordance with the guidance for school systems and the operation of central and non-central ventilation systems. We're going to be following the guidelines of flushing our classrooms with as much fresh air as possible. So that entails in the morning before anyone even comes into the building. So imagine if our custodians open the building at 7 o'clock, probably around 5 o'clock, we have an automated system. we'll have that automated system tell the fans to kick on at 5 a.m. in all of the classrooms. And what that will do is it will circulate all the air in the classroom and draw in fresh air so that you don't have the ambient, stagnant air in the classroom. And you're flooding that room now with fresh air before the arrival of anyone. Those fans will run all day long. What happens sometimes is if you're not in a room, it becomes unoccupied and the system shuts down and the fan will go off because no one's in that room. We're going to be overriding that so fans continue to run all day long, getting in as much fresh air as possible. We will then allow those fans to run after the evening custodian leaves for the evening. So it'll probably be an hour after the custodian leaves. Those fans will continue to run before shutting off for the evening. We are going to be commissioning all of the building mechanical systems to ensure they're working to their fullest capabilities. And what that means is we will be working with a mechanical engineer company to come in and look at all of our mechanical systems. So imagine we have it's an automated system. I have a computer in front of me. I can pull up any classroom in the district and I can look at the heating and ventilation in that room. I can look at what the temperature is, what the setback point for that room is. I can look at any of the dampers in the building or air handlers. And I could be looking at it on a computer, and the computer can be telling me one thing, but what's actually happening in the ceiling or maybe in a closet isn't what's actually happening. So by commissioning, what you're doing is you're actually inspecting and evaluating all of the actuators, the dampers, the air handlers to make sure that what the computer is saying it's doing, it's actually doing. So we will be working with a vendor to do this. There will be visual inspections of all ventilation systems, both automated and manual. And that includes that visual inspection of dampers and all the controllers and actuators. Sort of in concert with that, we will be cleaning all of the ductwork in our buildings. So similar to your home, we have supply and return ductwork in all of our buildings. They supply the heat. In this case, in this room, we have not only heat, but we have cooling being supplied to the room, but then you have vents in the room that return the air and circulate it. So we'll be cleaning the insides of all of those vents, and the surfaces are all going to be cleaned out. Anything associated with the HVAC systems, the air handlers will be cleaned. This includes cleaning all the diffusers, any grates. Some of the buildings, especially if you go into the cafeterias or gymnasiums, you might notice a grate on a side wall. Those are usually your return grates. They're going to pull those down. They're going to clean them by hand. This side that you see, but also the back side that you don't see, will be cleaned and scrubbed by hand and power washed before being replaced once all of the ductwork is clean. So we're really targeting our ventilation systems to make sure the air that we are supplying into our classrooms, our larger areas, is as clean as it can be. Moving on to training related to health and safety protocols. So there actually is quite a lot of training that our staff will need. We're going to be expecting our building staff to view and complete training through GCN online tutorials. We use GCN tutorials for other trainings for our staff. We will be expecting them to take the COVID-19 training. There are actually 5 already on the GCN training site. And we will also be continuing our third-party training of custodial staff in those procedures of cleaning and disinfecting. We will also ensure that the training for COVID-19 is provided to our substitute teachers that we have in district who may not always be in our buildings every day, and also to any outside providers. Typically, those are our outside providers who may come in from out of district to provide specialized instruction for students receiving special education. Other individuals entering the school buildings. We are going to strictly limit the visiting or visitors to the buildings. Again, this is to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 and to maintain our cohorting within the buildings. So visitors to the building will be really strictly limited to parent business, such as if it's a late drop-off, maybe they had an appointment in the morning, It could be an early pickup. It could be a parent visiting the nurse's office, or maybe they have business within the office if they're possibly enrolling a student or disenrolling a student. They will be checking in at our front security monitor and then stating their business there. The security monitor will determine whether it could be handled right then and there, or do they need to be buzzed into the office. But that's really where visitors will be contained to, again, to minimize that spread or any contact. We are not at this time expecting to have volunteers in classrooms, outside groups or clubs visiting the schools. Child nutrition, I'm sorry. Where am I? Child nutrition. So I've already covered the first two here. So child nutrition, we are expecting to have lunches eaten in the classrooms, again, to contain our cohorts. We are going to have lunches prepared in the kitchen and delivered in containers to classrooms on carts, using disposable utensils and trays as much as possible, so that, again, everything could be disposed of in the classrooms, and custodial staff will then be able to take that away for ease of cleanup without, again, intermingling. There will be lunches available for pickup daily for families who might be participating in remote learning. The logistics of that will be developed at the building level because it may look a little bit different at each building, again, because of the physical makeup of the school itself. The next would be transportation. We have 3 levels of operating status. Safe status would be in the presence of an immunization, we would be able to go back to safe status, which is transportation as it was before COVID-19 hit. Low status is really what we're going to begin the year operating in, which is up to full capacity, but with restrictions in place. So the restrictions in place that we are going to have are masks required for all drivers and passengers on the bus, procedures for loading and unloading the bus. So if you can imagine, if I'm the driver, my first stop, that student is going all the way to the back of the bus. I pull up to the next student, that student is going to go to the back of the bus. What you're doing is you're loading from the back to the front, so you're mitigating the amount of people you're passing on the bus as you walk down the aisle. We're looking to cohort families, so if I have siblings, my siblings and I are going to be sitting in a seat together. There will be a plan for increased cleaning and sanitizing of all vehicles, and again, keeping associated logs with that, so we have a record of how often those buses are being cleaned. Parents are encouraged to transport children to school if at all possible. We will have enhanced building protocols and procedures for arrival and departure at the schools, and those will take into consideration the increased traffic as well as the increased foot traffic around the buildings. And again, this is where it might be a little bit different from building to building. Principals will be communicating that out to families prior to the start of the school year. I am meeting with BOA directors Wednesday to discuss further the bus protocols and procedures that will be implemented across the BOA districts, so that we're trying to remain as consistent as possible with that. And finally, as Dr. Scarpetti said, we do have some preliminary survey results as far as transportation is concerned, and it breaks down to about 55% of families are saying their students will be riding the bus, and about 45% will be able to drop their child off and pick their child up, and then there's a small percentage for 21st century. Some of those 21st century children will be riding either the bus or getting dropped off or picked up. So there's a spread across both for that. And those are the mitigating strategies and how we will be reopening the buildings. I want to thank you for your time.
Mr. Gray, if you wouldn't mind, would you mind sharing the board where the buildings are currently are with cleaning?
Yep.
And
So right now, what we've done is this summer since we had so much time to clean while school was not in session, we teamed up our custodians, and we were able to have them work in cohorts to clean our buildings. So right now, Turkey Hill School is 100% clean. Peck Place School, I would say, is probably 98% clean. They have a couple of odds and ends to do. Racebrook School is about 95% clean, and MLT is 100% clean. So we are ready to reopen our buildings. There are some odds and ends, a couple of areas of painting that custodians will be touching up, but our buildings are really ready to go for the beginning of the year. It was in part due to having the extra time to clean, but also our custodians working together and teaming up to make that happen as well. So.
Again, if you notice on the top of here, the health practice and protocols, anything you see on top are the categories that you see in front of you. That's part of the requirements by the state. If you start noticing board members are at home, repetition, there's a lot of it. So if you're at home, if you're thinking, oh, they already went over that, these are key elements that we go over with anything. So again, with the health practices and protocols, that category, again, they go over with the distancing, the washing of hands with either soap and water or hand sanitizing, the mask wearing, and the cleaning protocols. Health practice and protocols will continue about nurses, making sure immunizations and health assessments are completed, and the part of reporting illnesses and addressing vulnerable populations. People with COVID-19 have a wide range of symptoms reported, ranging from mild symptoms to severe illness. Symptoms may appear 2 to 14 days after exposure to the virus. People with these symptoms may have COVID-19. So here's a list of, on the bottom, does this have a laser map? So here are typical symptoms that we exhibit possible COVID-19. We share this only with you not to create a sense of heightened awareness of, oh my gosh, if I cough, I may cough right now speaking with you. Does not mean I have COVID-19. So we want to make sure we do it intentionally, and due to that, we are creating a checklist to share with parents and staff. Some of that may be starting your day, not only with a child, but even our own staff, taking your own temperature. So we want to do that, and again, it's all in coordination. If you suspect anything, to reach out to the nurse so she could have that communication with the Department of Health. Here we are, again, the health practice and protocols, to reemphasizing everything we discussed before. So the social distancing, the face covering, the face shield, clear plastic barriers, which you will see at certain places in our schools, and about the face covering mask and face shields that discussed. You see all of us wearing us today. There'll be proper procedures of how to put masks on, take masks off, where to store masks. So again, things that may seem very minor are going to create a huge effect to us to be impacting and mitigating anything that we can to have a clean and healthy building. And in addition, there's going to be a list of containment plans. So one of the things that we received through the reopening committee is a litany of what ifs. What if this person in the school gets it? What if someone else gets it? You know, and we appreciate everything that we received of the questions that we received. And if you had a moment to look at the frequently asked questions that we share with families, it will be on a case-by-case basis. So if there's a concern, we want to make sure there's clear communication. That's something going on personally with the family. But again, if there's something that is in-house, we want to make sure we address it on a case-by-case basis. Again, a common theme is you're going to see a category of low, moderate, and high. This is going to be directed, again, the Department of Public Health will be developing specific community and school-based indicators to assist us in defining the appropriate decision and making the approach of where we may fall in these categories. Next up, we have Mr. Allring, our IT director, to discuss everything he's done to prepare for the fall with regarding technology, and he may also be sharing elements that what we've learned from by having school closed and practicing the remote learning. Matt?
Thank you, Dr. Scarpetti. So technology services does play a vital role in this reopening plan. Need my glasses. Technology staff are in constant communication with the members of the leadership team to help ensure we meet the needs of the students and teachers for technology in the classroom. In June, we did our first Chromebook collection, and it was around that time when we realized we were going to need to purchase additional Chromebooks. Excuse me one second. And it was in preparation for the unknown of the new school year. This is to eliminate the need for students to share devices in the classroom, and it will also allow students to have their own Chromebook for distance learning if necessary. Under the direction of Dr. Scarpetti, we've also posted updates for our parents on the district website at oess.org with copies of letters we've sent to parents via email. We've also posted COVID-19 and social emotional wellness information on the Coronavirus Update Center page. And as of recent, we've been posting parent communications regarding school reopening plans, and also information provided by the state for reopening of the schools. For the month of August, we're planning to do our second and final collection of Chromebooks to wrap up the 2019-2020 school year. These devices were being used by students for summer learning. We will then conduct a final inventory to determine if there are devices that remain outstanding and collect those. All Chromebooks will be cleaned and tested for functionality. We are working out the details for developing protocols and procedures for cleaning Chromebooks throughout the next school year. At this point, the Chromebooks will be assigned to each student in the district. Happy to say, kicking off our one-to-one initiative for grades K through 6, as opposed to just grades 3 through 6 in previous years. During August, we also will be ensuring that there is working technology in the classrooms. For example, ensuring interactive boards are functioning properly. Chromebook carts and charging stations are located in the classroom to support the new one-to-one initiative through grades K through 6. Student and teacher laptop software needs to be updated and will be. Wireless coverage is also important to make sure it's available for the new school year. And we will be extending wireless coverage as needed as well. I did reach out to our board member, Mr. Kapp. I asked him to just kind of review the technology portion of the reopening plan and ask for suggestions or anything he might add. He did add, to piggyback off of Mr. Gray, signage that's going to be important for the next school year. And, came up with the idea of maybe a screensaver to maybe make a statement that says, wash your hands, or any various other statements that might be needed. And we did add it to the reopening plan. We have an online absence form for parents to fill out to report their child absent. We are working with the lead nurse to make any changes that are necessary to make it more COVID-friendly if parents need to report their child absent due to COVID-related issues. For the start of school in late August, early September, the Technology Services Department will be ready to support any user of technology. We'll offer fast and reliable support. My team will be posted at each school to ensure that the fastest support is available. The team's focus will be on providing maximum uptime for internet and for wireless coverage throughout the buildings. Programs that will be used for distance learning will be Google Meet, Gmail, and Google Classroom. We'll also use ClassLink for single sign-on. ClassLink allows students to break out the various online applications, and they don't have to worry about signing in. Due to teacher feedback, we configured Google Meet to disallow students to join a virtual class before the teacher arrives. And then, due to parent feedback and teacher feedback, we'll be allowing students to communicate via email with their teachers. That was a big one. For security purposes, though, the email will be limited to in-district emails only. Lastly, we'll provide mobile hotspots to students doing distance learning for situations such as not having the internet due to financial constraints, or there are low bandwidth limitations at home due to many devices being on the network. And it's important to point out with the hotspots, we can program them to work just with that school device. So that's my update for technology. Present now, Dr. Russo.
Good evening, everyone. Before talking a little bit about academics, I'd like to share some information about staffing and personnel. And all certifications and personnel planning will, as always, comply with will comply with our legal requirements in collaboration with Board Counsel. So, let's see, where is the, oh, is this? There we go. Oh, okay. So, as Dr. Scarpetti said, there will be 3 plans. Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, and we all have to know what the plans are and be ready at a moment's notice based on community indicators where to pivot. So right now, we're expecting that we'll all be able to engage in Phase 1 in the fall. That's full-time instruction, 5 days a week for everyone. And our priorities for students in the fall, we really have 3 big priorities. And the first one is to focus on developing social, emotional well-being. And Mary is going to talk a little bit more about that. But we're going to rely on our resources on the ruler approach. And as we've discussed in previous meetings, ruler is the acronym for those social, emotional skills. Recognizing emotions, understanding them, labeling them, expressing them, and then being able to regulate them. And this is really important because not only will we be using these approaches, we'll also teach children about certain tools that our faculty engaged in last year. Tools like the charter, creating the school climate, talking with students about how they want to feel, especially during all this time with isolation and how to get more connected. And so that's going to be a really big part of reopening plans, sorry. Also, informal, sensible assessments to help us guide differentiated instruction. And as Mr. Gray talked about, a lot of student training on these new protocols and procedures for all these new mitigating strategies in the context of school and daily school life. But what we're excited about is also in school having mock remote like home sessions, making sure that students really know what they need to do when they are home, because we didn't really get a chance to do that when everything happened last spring. And so when we talk about what are they going to be supported with at school for those mock remote sessions, we're going to make sure everyone knows how to use all of those resources on ClassLink that Mr. Ulring referred to. We're going to make sure everyone knows how to access the Google Classroom, join a classroom, access resources, submitting assignments, because we had a lot of challenges with these in the spring. We did resolve a lot, and some students and classes, especially the 3 through 5, got really good at this, but we still face special challenges with the younger students, the kindergartners, the first graders. As Mr. Ullring said, teachers did provide lots of feedback, but sometimes the students didn't know how to access that feedback. So he's worked with his team to create a nice way to do that through the utilization of the emails. Also, as Mr. Ullring mentioned, there's a seamless ability to join Google Meet now for those live face-to-face interactive sessions that we also talked with our curriculum subcommittee and received lots of feedback from parents that, you know, we want more face-to-face time, and the Google Meet option is now a lot easier because it's embedded right into the Google Classroom. So teacher priorities for the fall, there's going to be lots of professional learning, making sure that teachers know how to use a lot of our new digital resources. They really increased their knowledge last spring. We received some responses in a survey to them, and when you look at pre-remote learning and post, they are much more confident in what they can do now, but we've added some new resources like Edpuzzle that will help the interactive learning or support it. So they're going to make sure they're feeling really confident with all those things so that they can support the students when we're practicing what to do remotely. They're going to have a lot more training on Ruler, being able to orient themselves to the online platform and be able to access all the wonderful resources there to support their students. And an opportunity to prepare the resources for remote learning, like, I'll just show you a few examples. Our math specialist at Peck Place School, Susan Lukianov, she's created digital math manipulatives for every grade level. I just wanted to share a sample of like the 5th grade shelf. So if you're at home and you're engaged in remote learning and you need your fraction bars and you don't have them, they're all available digitally. So we want to make sure that in the fall, students have an opportunity to explore these resources, learn how to access them when they are remote. And the silver lining in all of this is that it makes blended learning real-time more kind of 21st century. So it's a great opportunity to be able to access these resources and have them. Another example is for the kindergarten and the first grade students, you know, the Google Classroom was a little bit tough. So we can now create these virtual classrooms from like that skeletal one that I just showed you. And just as an example, I mean, the rug is the same as the classroom. The teachers can take a picture of the classroom and link all interactive resources. When you click on the book, the story can be read to you. And I just want a shout out to Ashley Bell, who's a kindergarten teacher, and she created this, and she's created templates to share with all her colleagues as well. And you could see that each teacher can fix up the classroom virtually just like they would when they are fixing their real classrooms. Opportunities for providing resources that are interactive for students, like why are people wearing masks? You know, how to stop the spread of germs. So kid-friendly answers to questions that make you realize why we're all doing all this and the importance of all this. And our teachers are so creative. They're designers. They're amazing at doing all of this. So they're going to bring this to life. Even like Ashley there, wear your mask, like all these little cute reminders that they're so good at doing with our students, and which is why we love them so much. So now that was like those were all plans for phase 1 when we're all in school. If something happens and we have to pivot to a hybrid model, we have plans. This is just like a basic sample. We have more developed plans that we're working on that we also need some more time with our teacher stakeholders, with BOA, with our leadership team. But basically, you'll have cohort 1 coming on Monday, cohort 2 working remotely, cohort 2 Tuesday, something like this. We still have to do a little more work here. But you get the idea. And then phase 3 is just full remote. And we did receive a lot of feedback from our parents that they wanted more synchronous time, which means real-time interactive, but not just the Google interaction live that you're typing back and forth, but increased face-to-face time. We've had these discussions at the curriculum subcommittee meeting, and we do have, sample schedules. This is just a sample. We want you to know that we have been thinking about them. We are creating them. We just have to finalize a little bit more with our teacher stakeholders. We also want you to know that the State Department of Education has provided many resources online, a learning hub. Mr. Ulring and his team will link this to our website as well, so everyone can access the resources from the state. And just a note about physical education classes, and really music. We still have more work to do in this area, but we are working with Dr. Mohammed and the Town Board of Health to guide us in this area, and we still also need to work with our teacher stakeholders to get this part of the plan down. As we said, they're all developing. And that's about it for me, and I'd like to turn it over to Mary Ito.
Mr. Crowe, I don't know if you want to have questions during this time or at the end, but I see Mr. Flynn has his hand raised, so I defer to you if you want to do questions now or at the very end. Why don't we do it, I think it's best now if it's fresh. I know we're going over a lot of materials all at once. As I said, it's a comprehensive form that the state has shared with all districts. So why don't, if you have a question, Mr. Finn, please.
Oh, thank you. Your first comment there, I couldn't quite understand. You said something about all personnel matters and certification will be on the advice of the.
Oh, yeah,
Tur-
so we're basically going to just continue to comply with all state requirements regarding certifications. So, our teachers are all going to be certified. We are going to continue with everything that we normally do as far as who we hire.
And then my second question, I know you mentioned, hopefully we're in that first plan, but that second hybrid plan, just I guess for families to plan on, do you have a tentative date where you think you might have an idea, just if we have to do that?
Yes, we need to continue to collaborate a little bit more with BOA because we want to also accommodate our families who have students in the middle school and the high school to help with all that planning. But Dr. Scarpetti, what would you say about the timeline for that?
So Dr. Russo is exactly right, Mr. Flynn. So when you think, and again, to just have everyone understand, when we look at a hybrid, that is a district decision. That's all right. So when we are looking at a hybrid, that's a district decision. So hybrid is planning for about 50% of our children to attend if there is a increase, probably not an increase of cases that we faced when we actually went on remote learning. So in order to do that, what would a district decide? There could be a variety of situations. One is a whole 50% of our students attending Monday through Friday, then the next attending the following week. Another element is a rotational day. And so when we create our scenarios, and this is a great thing collaborating with BOA, my understanding is that Amity is going to base it on a alphabetical system. Also my understanding, and I defer to especially the board members that have students in Amity, they have an 8-period day, that doesn't mean all students have A classes, so they need a rotation. So if we were deciding as a district to have our students, the same students on a cohort, 50% be on Monday and Tuesday, now we're thinking we may have to change that now, because we know that some of our students' siblings watch them. And I think another part of the challenges that we face as a community and as a state and as a country is making sure our families get back to work. So these are these incidentals that we're working out. Again, not so much about the hybrid, but look at the domino effect. So when you can imagine that if half of this room are alphabetized and you're here on Monday, because we're in a hybrid form, the other half will show up on Tuesday, but this is where our IT department is working, because you're going to be, this half of our students will have their computers at home on Monday, on Sunday, come to school on Monday. The other half of the group will be working from home on Monday, and then it's going to reverse. So Matt and his team has to make sure that, again, in the principal's procedures, so there's all these domino effects. So we're trying to get that finalized and making sure that it coordinates nicely with Amity. And so we'll be having conversations. So hopefully that will be coming out very soon to get those specifics out to families. But we do want to align as best as we can to help to assist our families with that.
No, thank you. I know it's a very complicated one, but I think it's also maybe the million-dollar question for a lot of multiple families like mine and others.
Absolutely. And I think we understand that, and we understand that people can understand what you just said, that it gets very complicated. And when you look at the domino effects, no matter if it's a cohort, the transportation, encouraging our families, we can't demand our families to drive their kids to school, but we hope that we have a large part to mitigate what's going on with the buses. So no matter what element we're discussing tonight, and the more questions that our board members have, there is a long depth of a trickle-down effect with each of those decisions, and we're trying to think clearly as best as we can to mitigate any situations we're faced with, no matter what situation, no matter if it's full, hybrid, or going back to remote. Please.
And the flexibility piece is huge, because regardless of everything, you could be in your class in phase 1, and if there's a case, then that whole cohort may just automatically have to go remote for 2 weeks. So so after we do like all the planning and everything, we could, because of an indicator, one cohort, either one class, one school, and not even maybe the whole district, would have to just go remote for 14 days and then come back. So it's tricky, and we all have to be flexible, but that's why it's so important that we work together and that we all understand the plans, so we know when we're going to pivot.
I'll ask, does anyone else have any questions for Dr. Russo? We good? Okay. Thanks.
This is the moment you've all been waiting for. And I only say that because I think we only have 3 more slides to go. So Orange, as you know, is committed to the provision of free and appropriate education in the least restrictive environment for all of our learners. So when we are creating a plan for our special education students, we look at the least restrictive environment, which is at the forefront of the Individuals with Disabilities Act, to ensure access and equal opportunity with our non-disabled peers. That will remain part of our responsibility and our commitment to our children of Orange. It's so important for us all to remember that the guidance and policies related to the school reopening plan apply to all students. As our special education students, our students who receive English language services or Section 504 accommodations, are first and foremost our general education students. Once we have that plan fully established, which of course it's always going to be a draft, I guess that's fluid, But using that plan, we will then be establishing individualized plans based on those individual student needs, whether that's through a PPT process, a Section 504 meeting, or a team meeting for our English language learners, or some of our more vulnerable, struggling students who may not fit into any of those categories. So we will be following the guidance of the state to help develop that plan. Recently, the State Department of Education, Brian Klimkowitz, who is the Bureau Chief of Special Education, announced on Friday that they will be preparing formal guidance around special education with the consideration of preschool, our high-needs students, and parent choice. So that document is coming, and we are looking forward to that guidance to help us develop our individual plans. The next piece, which Evelyn stole my thunder, but good news for you, I can keep it really brief. Providing systematic school-wide strategies to identify engaged populations and specific students who have been disengaged is going to be a huge responsibility for all of us. Good news for Orange is that prior to COVID, we began training our staff in the Ruler program. And the Ruler program, as Evelyn mentioned, stands for the 5 learnable skills of emotional intelligence. So our staff, beginning the first day and throughout the entire school year, will be addressing lessons around social emotional intelligence, and it fits nicely into our responsibility around the social emotional and mental health needs of our children. We also continue to support the mental health needs of our students and staff through programs such as the Parenting Solutions and training that our staff will all be required of in the beginning of the year. Our school social, emotional, and mental health needs are further supported by our 4 school psychologists, our social worker, our child associate, as well as our Ruler school-based team. Dr. Scarpetti mentioned earlier our community collaboration efforts, and Mr. Ulring mentioned our district webpage. One of the responsibilities in the document is to ensure that we have clear and ongoing communication about what's expected during and prior to reopening, and to make sure we're communicating to our families. As you may know, that as Matt mentioned on our webpage, we have over 25 letters that were published by the district to inform our families about what's been going on since our school closure, dedicated just to the COVID situation. In addition to that, the principals have sent out weekly communications. These emails were all sent to families based on their input into PowerSchool, so multiple email addresses would be provided by families, and every email address was sent these letters, as well as our district website has them posted in a section called the COVID Update section. This COVID Update section includes multiple documents, articles, webinars, and resources. We encourage our families and our community members to frequent this district site, as it's a great resource for updated information and for supports around social emotional health and hygiene practices. Parents and staff have been encouraged to contact their school principals and with questions and feedback on an ongoing basis. The reopening committee representative contact list was provided to all families and staff in the hopes that the members of our community would reach out in an effort to contribute to the planning effort. So we continue to encourage that input. The district has provided opportunities to complete surveys in order to express individual wishes and thoughts about reopening schools. Once the plan is published, an updated survey will be sent to our faculty and staff so that we can use that plan to continue to drive our decision-making based on the state guidance and our health director's guidance. Thank you.
Any questions? No? Good? Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Krell, that concludes our presentation. So if there's any questions that any board members have at this time, I defer you to Mr. Kraut we'll be more than happy to answer them.
First of all, thank you, everyone, for such a comprehensive overview of what's going on and how the school reopening plan is moving forward. I did have a couple of questions. I think, Dr. Scarpetti, you've mentioned right at the beginning a school liaison. Has such a person been appointed, or is that you? I mean, who's the school
That
liaison?
has been Mrs. Hadlock. We have a supervisor of nursing. Her name's Kathleen Malone. She'll be the official school liaison, but along working with her would be Mr. Gray and myself.
Okay, all right. And based upon all of the mitigation plans and the extra cleaning logs and the sanitizing procedures and protocols, do you anticipate hiring more custodians or increasing the maintenance staff?
We do not. Part of the literature that came out is really seeing what's feasible for each district. And that means we have to be pretty creative. One of the things that what would allow us to do with regards to not having any outside groups come to the school in the evening, that will allow our school security monitors to assist in helping cleaning. So for all intents and purposes, Mrs. Halak, we're planning to have a double resource. We're also looking and we want to be open regarding the schedule of our custodians. So possibly, and again, nothing has been decided, but we are constantly brainstorming different situations at different times that we may have to face, is possibly right now an evening custodian is from 2 to 10. But if no one's there in the evening, and if we're able to rearrange that schedule and then have those resources to support possibly custodians that are in the morning, we're always open to be flexible in that approach.
Say no outside groups. I guess that would mean there will no longer be all those different sports programs and town badminton and all those
That
kinds
is
of things
currently
will
the
not be happening.
Correct. Currently, that is the discussion at this moment.
Okay. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Anyone else? Well, thank you very much, Dr. Scarpetti, and to your staff. You did a great job. Appreciate it very
Thank you,
much.
Mr. Crow.
Thanks. Okay, where are we? Oh, might as well stay where you are there, Dr. Scarpetti. Dr. Scarpetti will give his report.
There's not much more to report, Mr. Crow and board members of, this has been the entire focus. Again, for those families at home that are watching, we truly understand no matter what you may be thinking or focusing on regarding if you're okay to come to school or if you're not, we are here to answer your questions. I know at times it may be frustrating if we don't have answers yet, but we are constantly working on them. But other than that, this is our one and only focus at this time.
Does that mean we won't be hearing from Christine, Evelyn, or Mary?
Is there any additional reports that, Dr. Russo, do you need to make any additional? I don't think you do.
We need to
Christine,
hear
do you want to
Mary,
just
though,
update the board quickly?
Or Christine and me?
Unless, yeah, why don't you do a
Yeah,
quick one,
Christine,
Mr.
yeah,
Crow?
please. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Despite the heels, I'll never be as tall as Dr. Scarpetti, so I'm going to bring this down a bit. It's good to see everyone face to face. It's been a long night. I have the unhappy task of being last, so I'll be quick. The Finance Subcommittee did meet this evening, and we reviewed June expenditures and financials, and there were no out-of-the-ordinary expenditures. We did have balloon payments for teachers, so that was in there. We do have a number of budget underspends that we've been speaking about, which are offset by a number of budget overspends. So underspends in the areas of salaries and benefits, interns, utilities at the schools, et cetera. Offsets by overspends namely in special ed, in curriculum, information technology, in food service, maintenance and repairs, and custodial supplies. So curriculum development and information technology are buying to support distance learning. They're also buying ahead for next year. Building maintenance is over budget due to the investment that we're making in the ventilation that Mr. Gray discussed earlier tonight. We are bridging two financial systems at the moment over the year end. We have transitioned to the Munis accounts payable and general ledger package, and things are going well there. So we do have two reports, one from the old system, one from the new tonight that are in the package. We're still we're ending the year. The year's not closed out yet. We're still entering final purchase orders for the year, and at the same time, we're setting up for the new year. Our auditors have started their field work for the 2019-20 year as well. To cover the cost of COVID-related equipment and software for distance learning, as well as protective equipment and cleaning supplies, we've opened an application for elementary and secondary education emergency relief funds, also called ESSER. You'll see it referred to as ESSER. These funds are allocated to school districts based on Title I funding. As the district also anticipates additional funding that will be needed, we'll be looking to FEMA funds. And as we continue through the year and we access ESSER and FEMA, and we look at our special ed excess costs, we'll be able to give more detail around the 2021 budget and where it stands. But I think that's it from my end.
Questions for Christine? Betty?
Yeah, hi, Christine, I just wanted to say that looking at the new documentation format, I thought was very helpful. I especially liked the one that had the yellow heading on it, that really gave an overview of everything. And I thought, okay, that's nice to have a summary type of sheet. And the format from Munis, I know it wasn't everything that way. You said it's a combination, but it looks like that's going to be very easy to read and to understand. So,
Oh,
good
great.
work. Thank you very much.
I'm glad to hear. Thank you.
No? Okay.
And
Thank you.
Mr. Kraut, if I may just add just two more things before you continue. We did
Sure.
hire two new teachers, a special ed teacher at Peck and a first grade teacher at Racebrook. We want to extend our thanks to the committee that has worked on those hires, but especially the candidates that, even interviews that occurred over the weekend, to use our time wisely because how much things have been busy during the week.
Thank you. Board business, we have a second read. Policy 5131, student conduct, was presented at the June Board of Ed meeting as a first read. I will be looking for a motion to adopt policy 5131, student conduct. Do I have a motion? Ken, second? Betty, any further discussion on this? All in favor? Good. Opposed? Abstain? Very well. First read, CABES policy 5141.8, face mask coverings. That's a first read, so you need to look at that over the next few weeks. We'll be looking for a vote on that in the August meeting. Discussion and possible action regarding district ventilation systems. Dr. Scarpetti?
Thank you, Mr. Kraut. As we shared, the ventilation and air quality is a #1 priority of our school district to attend. We are looking at having the ductwork clean in addition to making sure the systems that Mr. Gray shared with the computer systems. We wanted to share with all of you that a possible vote, I want to be transparent with the cost of the cleaning. So I want to bring to the board, I'm not sure if this is a maintenance piece that does not have to go to the board, or if it does, we would need a vote to hire the vendor to clean and start cleaning next week. Sure. Mr. Gray, would you mind coming up?
Mr. Gray, why don't we just label any companies you talk about as A, B, and C, okay?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Why don't we just label any companies you may be talking about as A, B, or C, okay,
Sure.
please? Thank you.
Yep. Let me just pull this up quickly. So we requested quotes to conduct the cleaning of our ventilation systems here in the buildings, and we did receive 3 separate quotes. One of our companies, and I'll say Company A, had a combined cost for our ductwork cleaning at $68,677, and approximately 3 weeks to conduct the cleaning of the systems for all 4 schools. Company B was at a total combined of $80,300. And again, it was just around 3 weeks to complete the project in all 4 of the buildings. And Company C came in, they have a range not to exceed a certain number. So their range was $41,300 to $50,740. And their range is from 2 to 2.5 weeks to finish the project. And again, not to exceed the $50,740 and not to exceed the 2.5-week time frame. So those quotes came in from those 3 companies. I have been in contact with 2 of those companies about start dates. The Company A could start the last week of July, first week of August, as well as Company C. We have not heard from Company B. So we would be finished with those projects mid-August, right around August 14th timeframe. August.
Okay. And why don't you tell the board a little bit how these companies were vetted and that sort of thing? I know that Mr. Rotolo was helpful in
Sure, yes.
giving us some guidance on that as well.
Mr. Rotolo from Rotolo Mechanical, who does work here. I worked closely with him. He has used these companies in the past to do work in buildings that he's worked in. And actually, one of the companies, in speaking with their salesperson the other day, actually, I was very happy to hear, has some very high background checking clearance. They do work in MGM Grand, they do work at Sikorsky, they do work at Pratt & Whitney. So they have some very strict protocols they need to adhere to, and have they've had some very detailed background checks done, which is important. Anytime you're working in a school, you want to make sure that the people who are coming into our buildings are people we want working in our buildings. So these companies have been around for quite some time. Again, the company that I was talking to the other day that has done work in some of these high, I guess I'll say high clearance places such as Sikorsky and Pratt & Whitney, their consultants, their technicians have a lot of longevity. So one of them has been there 17 years, one of them has been there 15 years, another's been there 11 years, and there's one that's been there for 5 years, but he went somewhere else and came back. So really he has more than 5 years, but right now it's concurrently 5 years. So, they come very highly rated. We also I've seen personally before and after photos of work that they've done. So they have been thoroughly vetted by myself in conversations with them, but also through Mr. Rotolo.
Is there a company you would make a recommendation for?
So I think I would make a recommendation for Company C.
Okay. All right. Well, this is something that we clearly have to do because discussion has been for months that airflow is extremely important.
And if I could add to that, I actually went and did the walkthroughs with all 3 companies, and all 3 companies right away noticed that none of the ducts have ever been cleaned in the buildings, because what you'll usually see are access holes that are cut into the ventilation system, and what they do is when they're done, they cover those holes back up, You don't replace any of the ventilation system. You want those holes there so you can go back and investigate at another time to see when you need to clean them again. So none of the ductwork in district, through our investigations, have ever been cleaned.
I think, Susan, you have a question?
I do. I just wanted to clarify that the same tasks are going to be performed by all three companies, and they had the same kind of feedback of what they were planning to do.
They are, yes. So in their quotes, they specified exactly what they were going to be doing, and it was the same for each of the companies.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Um, From what you're saying, it's a one-time process. It's not something that would have to be repeated throughout the year, or,
No, it's not something that would have to be repeated throughout the year, but it is something that down the road you may revisit, probably not anytime soon.
And how will air quality be measured once this is done? I mean, is there some kind of check that'll be happening? I mean, I really have no idea, but once this
So
is done, what will
I can-
the results be?
I can consult not only with them, but also with another vendor who will be doing the assessment of our mechanical systems, because they'll actually be measuring the air, the fresh air mix coming in with the heat and cooling that we have. But it's also monitoring the filters in the univent systems, as well as what we have in our returns and our feeds.
Is the company that you recommend is the one that has the higher clearance?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to clarify.
Yes.
I'd like to add is, Dr. Scarpetti and the staff has basically started to put in protocols for yearly, bi-yearly, monthly maintenance and a lot of things, and that started with some of the filters and whatnot as well. So maybe to answer Betty's question, we're putting together protocols so that this is standard practice. It doesn't go since 1973 without being cleaned. So
Right.
anyhow, any other questions for Mr. Gray? So the question is, I think Susan and I talked about that. Does the board need to vote on this, or is this actually maintenance? In discussing it with Dr. Scarpetti, I wanted to bring it to the board so the board knows what's going on, because it is a sizable amount of money. Dr. Gray is recommending, I'm just going to call it not to, what was the high number on that?
That was $50,740.
3,740. If we do a motion, I'll do it not to exceed that number. If it comes in lower, it's best. Does the board feel it needs to vote on this, or do we need to get a, go ahead, Ken, I can't hear you. Okay, we'll vote on it? You good with that? Yeah. Okay, so Ken has made a motion to hire Company C, whatever that company is, for the duct cleaning for an amount of not to exceed $50,740, correct?
Say that again?
$50,740?
Yes, $50,740.
Ken, that's your motion? Do I have a second? Kim, any discussion on this? All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Very well, thank you, Mr. Gray.
Thank you. We'll get that started as soon as possible.
Dr. Scarpetti, you going to talk about the 2020 school year?
Yes, and again, before we move on, with your permission, Mr. Crow, I want to thank you for sharing that systems and approaches that we've been changing, so there is maintenance. One of the things that has been kind of shocking to me is when we think about what we're facing as a school system, you would think that the predominantly thing that we'd have to face is regarding the instruction. And as you see this part of the plan, and quite honestly, the length of time Mr. Gray had to present, the cleanliness, the maintenance, the ventilation, the water systems, procedures of cleaning, this is a huge, huge element of the success that we're going to have in our district. But thank you for sharing about the systems we're creating, Mr. Crow.
Not a problem.
That being said, many of the board members, I know I've talked with some of you already, but it was presented to the Connecticut State Board of Education a decrease on the required amount of days for school. the the Connecticut State Department of Education Board has allowed schools to be decreased by 3 days. This will allow districts to have, in the beginning of the year, professional learning days dedicated to our teachers and getting prepared for many of the things that we discussed today. It is my request, Mr. Kraut, that the board decreases the amount of school by 3 days. And just to be more specific, the state requires 180 school days for a school. However, districts have decided probably 180, 181. Some districts are 184. We were 181. So I would like to decrease 3 days as allowed by the Department of Education Board. One of the things that goes with my response to Mr. Flynn of finalizing one thing that we're thinking about doing, which we will share with the board in the future. So if we have 181 days of school, which we do, it would drop down to 178. But one of the things that we're thinking with specific with the hybrid form is to have a practice run. So students could get used to it before, well, unfortunately, that it won't happen, or any practices we could do. Other districts are planning to do that outside, but also within BOA. We'll update you further on that if we do a trial day. But by doing that and having 178 days, if half the kids show up one day to do the trial and half the kids show up another day, we're still meeting the requirement of 180 days.
For a motion to decrease the school calendar for 2021 from 181 to 178 days.
That's correct.
Yeah, can I just ask a question
Sure.
first? I just want to be sure I understand.
Sure, I'm sorry.
Student days will be reduced by 3 days, but
Correct.
staff will be, their professional development days will be increased by 3 days.
Correct, exactly, Mrs. Hadlock.
Okay.
And that was the
All right.
intention of why this was brought to the Connecticut
Yep,
State
okay.
Department of
I just wanted to
Education.
be sure the
No, I
professional
appreciate
development days is plus
Yes.
3,
The
student days
requirement-
minus 3. Yep.
Correct. The requirement for a teacher year has not changed at all. They will have to work the same amount of days. It's the student days. Thank you for that clarification.
I just want to clarify, under this proposal, would the school start date change, or?
Thank you, yes. So currently, our school start date is August 26th. The school start date would be August 31st. That's a Monday.
School end date.
It's tough to hear you, Mr. Crown, I'm
What
sorry.
would be the school end date?
It should be the same end date
Okay.
at that time.
All right. Any,
The students would have a full 5-day week to start the school year this year.
Correct.
Yes.
Is there any flexibility in, minimum days that first week? Yeah, the light's on. Want me to be louder? I can be. Yeah. Was there any conversation about possibly, since if we're going to a full 5-day first week, of making some of those minimum days?
We are discussing that too, Mrs. Ricchio. Again, we wanted to try and see what's the best thing. So again, going back to what I shared earlier with regards to a trial of the hybrid, that domino effect that I just shared with Mr. Flynn, I don't know if I would want to do it that Monday and Tuesday. And why is that? Because I want to make sure that kids are getting the practice of not only of the hybrid of what that day would look like, but the practice of bringing computers back and forth from home. And if procedures haven't been set up yet, then in my mind, I would rather not do it on that Monday and Tuesday. Some districts are doing it that Monday and Tuesday. But to your question, some of the things we have to talk about at leadership, but of course, this is something that we would bring to the board, and possibly to have another meeting, is it viable that we could do an early release day, and how many days would the board recommend or be approving in order to have a transition into it? Other elements when we've discussed about that, as the board is well aware of, we make one decision, but what's the cause and effect? Would parents appreciate that? And these are just current discussions we're having. Or are families needing to go to work, and that half-day will impact them. So
Right.
you hear both sides right now to that discussion, Mrs. Ricchio.
Thank you.
Other questions for Dr. Scarpetti on this? So specifically, we're reducing the student calendar.
Yes, Mr. Crowe.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I'll make the motion to reduce the student calendar from 181 days to 178 days in the 2021 school year.
I'll second.
Susan, second. Any discussion?
Well, should we just go ahead and then move the start,
I'm sorry?
should we address the start date in the,
Do you want
In
that
the
in the motion?
motion.
Sure. What did you say the start date would be?
It'd be August 31st.
So the
Monday,
start date would be August 31st for the student calendar. Thank you, Kim. Anything else? So we have a second. Susan, any other discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Very well. Thank you, Dr. Scarpetti. Superintendent's evaluation, we will be going into executive session for that. Standing committees, Finance and Operations, Ms. Ricchio.
So Finance did meet prior to this meeting. We went through expenses, as Mrs. Koch had said, that everything was in order. We are closing out the year appropriately. Some of those numbers aren't finalized yet, so we'll have more information for next month. Also adjusting, looking at the numbers, what the current budget for 2021 will be once we've made all the adjustments from this year to next year, et cetera. So all of those things were good. Cafeteria ended up slightly behind where we normally would have been. We anticipated a loss. We had a little bit larger of a loss as a result of them going 2 additional weeks, as well as we were paying them through the school year. Do I hit 21st century in this? Yes. So also, in addition, 21st century, we reviewed the 21st century budget. That will also be, we looked at 1920. Unfortunately, because they didn't have the full year, they did operate at a slight deficit that does not affect tax dollars, does not affect board budget. It came out of their retained earnings. There will be an adjustment, slight adjustment to the tuition for some consistency for decreases in number of days for students, et cetera. More information on that to come from 21st century. That's it.
So, very well. Personnel policy, Kim?
I'm going to take this opportunity for a mask break. The Policy, Personnel, and Transportation Subcommittee is very sensitive to the need for students and teachers to have mask breaks. Mr. Gray was very thorough in describing and explaining the policy, but I do want to reinforce that as part of the Connecticut Reopening Plan, boards of education were required to develop a mask policy. You'll see, actually, if you look at the policy, that there are 3 numbers, and that's just because it covers dual series, the students and the personnel. In short, the policy requires that all students, staff, and bus drivers wear masks. Masks will be provided for students who don't have them on the buses and at school. In addition, they'll be provided to staff at some point in the school year. Students, staff will wear masks all day with certain exceptions, exceptions for documented medical reasons, for extended breaks with social distancing, and those extended breaks are eating, physical education, and recess. In addition, because we are very sensitive to the need for students to have mask breaks, there will be, the policy addresses specifically 2 mask breaks in the morning and 2 in the afternoon for students, but teachers certainly may schedule more mask breaks for students as they want to sort of work into their daily routines. In addition, teachers do not have to wear masks when they are teaching, but the policy emphasizes the need to increase social distancing, not less than 6 feet, while those teachers are teaching students. For those of you, the second read would be next month. When you make notes, if you make notes on the policy itself, I don't get an alert to that, so it would be helpful if you do have questions that you call or email directly so that we can address those. There's been some discussion since the meeting to try to insert the word clean or in front of masks just to reinforce good mask hygiene, so we'll have to work out that detail. And just thank you for everyone. The turnaround time was really fast. CABE got their policy going. Dr. Scarpetti followed up with them. They got it to us as soon as it went through their lawyers. The committee was willing to meet last week, and we have it for a first read for you tonight. So just thank you very much, everyone, for meeting last week.
Kim? Any questions for Kim? Kim brings up a great point. Anyone who does have questions on first reads, whether a policy it may or may not be, certainly please contact the chair of that committee with questions prior to the meeting so that if there needs to be changes made, they can be made, or Dr. Scarpetti or myself. But always try to work with the chair on when they come for the second read, that any thoughts that may need to be put into the motion get put into the motion. Buildings and grounds. Mr. Flynn.
Good evening. We have not met yet this month. I am hoping to schedule a meeting for early next week, so if the committee members could just touch base before we leave we'll try to set up a convenient time. Dr. Scarpetti and I have been in regular contact as this situation has developed over the summer, and I don't mean to speak, but I think I can speak for the other Buildings and Grounds members, how excited we are to have Mr. Gray with us, working with Buildings and Grounds, and it was a very impressive presentation. I can't imagine taking over in the first month of your job the facilities of an entire school district in the midst of a pandemic, but I can speak for myself when I say that was we have found the right person to handle that with confidence and trust. So with that said, I think we should be meeting hopefully early next week to follow up and go move from there. Thank you.
For Charles. By the way, Charles, Mr. Gray is a Red Sox fan. Curriculum instruction, Mr. Zyman.
Mr. Chairman, I have to say that now that Dr. Russo and I have worked out everything, I came in today with my little talk and Mr. Gray took it. Nonetheless, the beginning of the year is devoted to establishing and practicing procedures and routines. But these involve things like how to come in the room, how to leave the room, how to pass out papers, all of this stuff. There's a reason that the state plan begins with the word adapt. Children are going to have to learn social distancing. They're going to have to learn avoidance of touching. These are things that are not in their nature. And so anything the parents can do to prepare them for this and explain this to them will be very helpful, and get them started wearing masks, just getting used to wearing the masks. It's difficult for us. All of these things are difficult for adults, so it's got to be uncalculable in terms of what it does to the children. So anything they can do to prepare them will be helpful. We'll be having our meeting this Thursday at 4:30 instead. That's it.
Sure, Mr. Zyman. Let me just take a moment here to make the board aware. It may be necessary for us to have a special meeting or two between now and our next meeting, depending upon what may come up, and with the implementation of Dr. Scarpetti's plans. Also, we may need to have an additional committee meeting as well. So I just wanted to make the board aware that the next 4 weeks we might have to have a couple meetings. We may not. So, and I'd like to thank Dr. Scarpetti and staff for an excellent presentation. Thank you for the information, Dr. Scarpetti. Thank you for extending a lot of information to the board during the past 3 or 4 months. It's greatly appreciated. Let's see.
ACES.
At this time, yes, ACES.
So ACES, yeah, I'll take off too. I get my break too, but I pulled off an earring too. ACES did not meet in July. We will be meeting in the beginning of August, and that will not be a full meeting. That's considered a special meeting for ACES. So, more to come.
All right, so I will be looking for first, Dr. Scarpetti, would you like to join us in executive session? Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to take tonight's meeting into executive session, along with Dr. Scarpetti. Charles, second. Kim, any discussion on this? All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? You good? Okay, we are in executive session.
8:58.
Okay. Susan, would you please read the motion regarding Dr. Scarpetti's contract?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to modify the terms and extend Dr. Scarpetti's contract one additional year. The modifications will be done by the executive board.
Motion. Betty, do I have a second? Mary? Any further discussion on that?
Wait, who made the second?
Mary?
Mary.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Got it?
Opposed, abstained? Unanimous? Very well. Thank you. Yes, Ken?
No, that's mine.
I'm sorry,
Your
Ken.
second.
You jumped the
Your
gun.
second, sorry, Ken. I already typed it
Susan,
in.
Susan made the motion to adjourn. There was a second by Ken. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstained? We are adjourned at 9:29. Thanks, everybody.